Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Practicing every day, listening to English podcasts, watching movies, but you're still not improving as quickly as you'd like? It's frustrating, right? I've been there too. But what if I told you there's a secret to learning English faster than you ever thought possible? If you stay with me until the end of this video, I'll share that secret with you. And I promise, it's something that can change the way you approach learning forever. When I first started learning English, I used to feel like I was walking in circles. I'd memorize words, I'd study grammar rules, and yet I couldn't speak smoothly or understand everything in movies. It was like something was missing. But eventually, I realized that the key to learning fast wasn't about more practice. It wasn't about memorizing endless lists of vocabulary or obsessing over grammar rules. The secret? Immersion. Sounds simple, right? But here's the catch. It's not just about reading or listening to English for a few minutes every day. To truly learn fast, you need to immerse yourself in English 24/7. And I know you might be thinking, but I don't live in an English-speaking country? Well, that doesn't matter because there are countless ways to immerse yourself in the language, even if you're not surrounded by native speakers. When I realized this, everything changed. I started listening to English podcasts during my commute, changing the language on my phone to English, and even watching movies without subtitles, even when I couldn't understand every word. It was hard at first, but over time, I started picking up more words, more phrases, and more of the natural rhythm of the language. But immersion isn't just about watching English shows or listening to English music. It's about actively using the language in your daily life. This was something I didn't understand when I started. I thought that just listening and reading was enough, but I was wrong. To really learn fast, you need to practice speaking and writing every single day. The more you use the language, the faster your brain will adapt and improve. Here's a trick that helped me a lot. Speak to yourself in English. It might sound a bit strange, but I promise you, it works. Every time I was walking somewhere or even doing chores, I would talk to myself in English. I'd say things like, I need to buy some groceries, or I think I'll go for a walk later. It might feel weird at first, but doing this helped me get used to thinking in English. And that's one of the key parts of learning a language quickly, thinking in the language. Another thing that really accelerated my learning was setting small, achievable goals. I used to think that I needed to master everything at once. But the truth is, that's impossible. Learning English or any language is a marathon, not a sprint. And you're going to burn out if you try to learn everything at once. So I started setting goals like learn 10 new words today, or watch an entire movie in English without subtitles. Small, manageable goals helped me stay motivated and gave me a sense of accomplishment every day. One of the best parts of this approach was how fun it became. At first, learning felt like a chore. I'd study grammar for hours and feel like I was getting nowhere. But when I started immersing myself in English, everything changed. Learning English became something I looked forward to, not something I had to force myself to do. And let me tell you, when learning becomes fun, it doesn't feel like work anymore. If you really want to learn fast, you also have to stop being afraid of making mistakes. I was terrified of making mistakes when I first started speaking, and that fear held me back for a long time. But here's the truth. Mistakes are part of the process. Everyone makes them, even native speakers. I made so many mistakes along the way, but I learned from each one. And the more mistakes I made, the better I got at understanding the language and communicating clearly. Now, let's talk about something that I think is super important, listening comprehension. If you want to speak English fast, you need to be able to understand what other people are saying. And this isn't just about learning vocabulary. It's about getting used to the rhythm of the language, the intonation, and even the slang that people use in everyday conversation. When I started listening to English podcasts and watching TV shows, I made a conscious effort not to use subtitles. At first, I didn't understand a lot, but I kept listening, and slowly my brain started picking up the context. I began to understand the general meaning, even if I didn't know every word. And that's the secret to fast learning. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to understand the main ideas. And over time, as your vocabulary grows, your ability to understand will improve dramatically. Here's another tip that I swear by. Repeat what you hear. If you're listening to a podcast or watching a video, or even talking to someone in English, repeat what they say out loud. Don't just listen passively. By repeating sentences, you're practicing pronunciation and getting more comfortable with speaking. It also helps your brain process the language more effectively. This simple habit helped me a lot because it turned passive listening into active learning. Something that was incredibly useful for me was to set time each day for English practice. It doesn't have to be long, just 15 minutes of focused study each day. That's enough to make steady progress. When I started, I made it a rule to practice English every morning. I'd review vocabulary, watch a short video in English, or practice speaking. The key is consistency. Even if it's just a small amount of time, make it a daily habit, and you'll see results much faster than you'd expect. Another thing that really helped me was reading books in English. I know it can be tough at first, especially if you're a beginner, but don't be discouraged. Start with simple books, like children's books or short stories. The more you read, the more you'll start to see patterns in the language. And as you improve, you can move on to more advanced books. The best part is, when you read, you're also improving your vocabulary and understanding how sentences are constructed, which helps with both speaking and writing. One thing I want to emphasize is patience. If you're serious about learning English fast, you have to be patient with yourself. Language learning is a journey, and it takes time. But trust me, if you stick with it, if you immerse yourself in the language and keep practicing every day, you will improve faster than you think. To wrap it up, let me say this. If you want to learn English fast, the secret is immersion. Surround yourself with the language, speak as much as you can, make mistakes, and set small, achievable goals. And above all, enjoy the process. Language learning is one of the most rewarding experiences, and when you're having fun, you'll learn faster and more effectively. Now, I want to dive deeper into how immersion works on a psychological level. When you're immersed in a language, your brain starts to treat it like any other skill you've learned. Think about it. When you learned to walk, you didn't do it by sitting down and thinking about it over and over again. You just kept trying until it happened. The same thing applies to language learning. Immersion helps your brain learn through exposure and practice. The more you hear, read, and speak, the more natural it will feel. And guess what? You don't have to wait for the perfect moment to start. One thing I often hear from learners is, "I'll start speaking when I'm more confident," or "I'll practice more once I've learned more words." But here's the thing. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to take that first step. You don't need to know everything to start practicing, and you don't need to have perfect grammar to speak confidently. The key is to start using the language as early as possible. Even if you can only say a few words, or even if you make mistakes, you're building the confidence and skills you need to improve. This was something I really struggled with at first. I thought I had to know every rule, every word, before speaking. But the truth is, the sooner you start speaking, the faster you'll improve. It's like learning to swim. You can study water safety all day, but the real learning begins when you're in the water. The more you speak, the better your brain gets at picking up patterns, using new vocabulary, and improving your fluency. And let me tell you this, you don't need to speak with perfect grammar. I know a lot of learners stress over grammar, but it's actually one of the most overrated things in language learning. Sure, grammar is important, but fluency is key. Fluency is what allows you to express yourself naturally and comfortably. Once you start focusing on communicating your ideas rather than making sure everything is grammatically perfect, your speaking skills will improve much faster. In fact, a study from the University of Edinburgh found that grammar accuracy doesn't actually correlate as much with language fluency as we think. What really matters is your ability to communicate effectively. So instead of worrying about every grammar rule, focus on practicing speaking as often as possible. Speak with confidence, even if you make mistakes. Your mistakes will teach you, and over time, you'll get better. This brings me to another powerful tip. Don't try to translate in your head. In the beginning, many learners try to translate everything from their native language to English in their minds before speaking. But this slows you down and creates unnecessary stress. Instead, try to think directly in English. I hope it's helped you, subscribe,